when it comes to a hero, really, it seems like the only qualification in Greek mythology is they have to be very, very great at something, whether that be because they are a demigod, a child of a god and a human, or because they just happen to be extremely favored by a god, which, like, even Agamemnon counts in that. Agamemnon, I believe, has Hera's favor, which is also probably why he sucks. I mean, like, yeah, it makes sense that they go together, right? So, other than that, the only things we see repeated are that these heroes are very, very human. What Aristotle likes about heroes is he likes ones that are good, that have some sort of moral purpose behind what they're doing, but they can't be too on the extreme of good or bad. If they're on the extreme of either when they start out, like say you have a hero that starts out, he's great, he's very virtuous, he's very prosperous, and you watch his decline, like, yes, you get that emotional, like, release of watching somebody fail, but you're missing all of the other emotions at the same time. So he needs to be an ordinary person, he needs to be a consistent person, and he needs to be realistic. And I think that that's the part that gets sticky for people like us who read this and think, like, is this person truly a hero if they do all of these not noble things? And that's because people like us bring that more modern sense of, we do expect a hero to, like, yes, they have a moral purpose, but that moral purpose is usually serving humanity. It's not necessarily serving the gods or serving, like some sort of function that's just for themselves. It's usually a higher calling than that. Look at Achilles, like somebody fighting somebody in power, because, even though you could argue who has more power, him or Agamemnon, right? Because whereas he's a demigod, Agamemnon is the literal leader. And so we do have a bit of that there, but you're supposed to be looking at Achilles standing up to Agamemnon like, oh, come on. Like, why are we doing this, So at the same time, it's like, we have those stories, but they don't exactly resolve the way we would want them to. So more what I wanted to do than go through Aristotle, because this is one of my blind spots I have to restudy every time that it happens. I wanted to talk about the different heroes, and there's 3 that I would call the main ones, and I'm bringing in a Roman one. I'm saying it now so nobody can call me on it. We're going to talk Achilles, Odysseus, and Aeneas. And I'll start with Achilles because we just read about a version of Achilles, and so Achilles is very fresh in our minds. When it comes to Achilles as a hero, clearly he is a demigod. Like, that is the function that makes him a hero. He's a demigod, and he has this, like, super speed and agility. And because of this, he gets that prophecy of greatness. That, like, you're either going to die an old man alone on your farm and nobody's going to know who you are, or you get to be so great that your name's going to be spoken for centuries later. And what we're supposed to be seeing in the Iliad, I don't know that we see it in Song of Achilles as much, is him grappling with that choice. Because him saying, I'm not going to fight, is him saying, you know what, I think I kind of want to be immortal if, like, this is what fighting means. And it's funny because while he's in that angry state, we use the word for wrath that's used for the wrath of the gods, Manon. Like, Manon's the accusative form, I forget. I think it's Manus is the nominative form for my classicists out there. But the word wrath only used for divinity. And then once that wrath is soothed, it's kind of funny because that's when he's already rejoined the battle. He's already made his decision to have this long, glorious life. But that god sense of him gets soothed when he gives Hector back to Priam. And so the duality between man and god kind of ends at the end of the Iliad with him returning the body, saying you can have your 11 days for a funeral. And so what's supposed to be interesting about the Achilles of the Iliad is all of that duality. We got man and god, we got anger versus, not anger, we got death and life, all of those things playing together. And so, yeah, Achilles isn't the kind of guy where you'd be like, I want to be just like him. I want to do all the things that he did. But he is the kind of guy where you look at him and you're like, well, what would I do faced with these choices? What would I think if I was in this situation? You know, like, could I let go of the anger of an insult long enough to do something that I think I'm supposed to do? Um, that's the lesson of Achilles, I think. And in these epics, it's kind of like a longer tragic tragedy in a sense, because like the heroes go up and down episodically throughout these epic poems. And some of them have much more tragic ends, some of them have happier ends. And the epic poems usually tend to focus on a point in time. I think we're supposed to like Achilles at the end of it. We're supposed to think like, okay, he's supposed to go on his way and do what he needs to do now. But at the same time, like, we had to see that very human moment of him to get there. To be like, okay, you know, can you actually get to this point of earning that kleos without going through so much struggle? I mean, that's like why we love them. Because they're interesting. You know, a character, and this was Aristotle's whole argument, a character who is all good all the time, that's so fucking boring. Nobody wants to read that. Nobody wants to listen to that. Nobody wants to watch that play. We want to watch the one where we go through the full range of human emotions, where we feel scared, happy, sad, angry, all of the things. And the gods tend to do that to us for some reason. I mean, this just goes overall with literature. Fiction is a safe way to explore concepts in the human world. And so we apply them to these bigger, larger than life people and characters. Certainly they can apply to ourselves on a smaller scale. We may not be as big as Achilles, but at the same time, we've all been so angry that we don't want to let something go. And maybe letting that thing go is the thing that's going to free ourselves, you know?
Hmm.
So Achilles is a good example because he is not any one thing. You can't pin him down as totally good. You can't pin him down as totally bad. His actions are kind of all over the place. The part where he gets more human, like you said, is where he gets friendlier and nicer, because part of what he's going through in that moment with Priam is he's seeing a dad cry over his dead son, realizing I'm going to be a dead son someday. This could be my dad. And realizing probably within that as well, I have done this to many fathers. I have made this happen a lot. And this doesn't feel great in my face, you know? Odysseus would probably be a good next start. So Odysseus is a lot less tragic than Achilles because, like, most of us don't know how he died. I'm pretty sure he died sailing off the end of the world. Like, I'm pretty sure it was a flat earther. Man just kept exploring and then sailed right off. Um, but with Odysseus, like, clearly, you know, the adjective that's used for him most often is wily. He has that like cunning, clever intelligence that both gets him into trouble and gets him out of trouble. And I feel like in the Odyssey, we both see that intelligence, the overthinking, take over, and like that causes the situation sometimes. Whereas other times we see it like, oh, it actually gets them out of them. Like telling Polyphemus his name was nobody. Who knew that would pay off later, right?
Hmm.
So with Odysseus, he's a lot more up and down than Achilles is. Like he's clearly a lot more good if we're just looking at his epic. It's once we get out of his specific epic that we start seeing like maybe Odysseus isn't the greatest guy because the Greeks don't like him. They know that because he's tricky with his words, he's gonna lie to them. He's going to like trick them somehow. So none of them trust him. And then when it comes to like how he got Achilles' armor, it was a contest between him and Ajax, the strongest Greek fighter, like most kills on the battlefield Greek fighter. And because the Trojan prisoners that they have, at least in the version that I'm thinking of, they had some Trojan prisoners. They were like, can you guys help us decide? Because we don't want to decide who wins this contest. The Trojan prisoners were all like, we're the most afraid of Odysseus, so he wins. And like that's who Odysseus is. He's going to trick you. He's going to lie to you. He's going to twist his words and play word games. And while we love him as an audience for it, we can clearly see, at least outside of his epics, that nobody else does. Nobody else likes him for it. And the only point we see it within the Odyssey is when he goes to the underworld, because that's where Ajax, the greater, sees him and just fucking turns around. He's like, yeah, I'm not talking to you. I'm not giving you anything. Fuck you.
I will say that one thing that Madeline Miller did like correctly was
Mhm.
when Patroclus is like listening to Odysseus and when he's trying to convince Achilles to fight and he's like talking about he has a wife at home that he hasn't seen and Patroclus is like I might believe him that he has a wife but I'm honestly not sure that I believe that he does. And I was like, "Oh my God. How
Yeah.
much does this guy lie that they're not even sure that Penelope is real?"
Like if she wasn't related to Helen, I feel like that would probably actually be a thing that happened because I think she's like a distant cousin of Helen's or something,
Hmm.
which is why Odysseus worked out marrying her when he was at the like whole picking out a suitor for Helen thing. So most of those men know Penelope's real. Um, it makes sense that Patroclus wouldn't, though, actually, now that I think about it, because he was a kid. So, and in her version, especially. But yeah, like, anyways, going back to Odysseus, he's much more a hero than we tend to think. So, shifting from Achilles, somebody who is angry, seems selfish to us, all of that, to Odysseus, we're getting a little closer, right? At least we know his moral purpose is I want to get home to my family. Like that is the driving force in his epic is I want to get home to my family. And everything that happens outside of that is just, the mishaps along the way. So he's not tragic. He has a tragic flaw, even if he's not tragic. And he's he's more well-rounded than Achilles, but still not quite there. Because again, like we see that intelligence play in such bad ways sometimes too.
Hmm.
Yeah, so then we're going to move to Aeneas. And Aeneas is Roman. Aeneas is basically Virgil's response to the larger epics of like, okay, we got to do a Roman one, right? So Aeneas, we've heard a little bit of him in Song of Achilles. He is a son of Venus, Aphrodite, and an old man named Anchises. And so when Troy's getting sacked, he's able to escape with a crew of men. I believe they probably only have one ship of men. It's like such little survivors. He takes his dad. There's like a pillar of salt moment because his wife isn't supposed to look back at the wreckage and then she dies. And he has a son with him. And so his epic, it's basically it's like the primordial Rome story because he goes from being a Trojan soldier who is like very highly regarded. He's named in the Iliad multiple times and has some prominent battles in it. And then he sails off, and just like Odysseus, he gets stuck somewhere. That is the one bad thing that happens to him where we can question his character because, other than that, this man, the word used to describe him most is pious. And it's not pious in the way that we think of pious, pietas in like Latin. It's knowing your place in society, it is knowing where you stand amongst the gods and amongst other humans. So, um, I've explained this to Shannon before, but like just for pod purposes, it's like the umbrella of authority in Christianity if it worked better. Like it is the idea that there is divinity over you, and then you have your master of the house, and then you have children and servants and all of that. And if everybody acts according to their station and they protect the people underneath them, we have a perfect system, right? So Aeneas is meant to embody that. He's meant to be the proto-Roman, and so we have him taking care of his aging father, who eventually dies on the journey. We have him. He does leave with the wife. The one romance he falls in love with, they used because Romans love to do this shit to like basically explain their one rivalry with Carthage. So Carthage was a city that they completely sacked, like took the dirt off of the ground and put it into the ocean, sacked. And the reason for the rivalry apparently is Aeneas spent 6 years in Carthage. And the way he was able to stay there, Venus wanted to protect him. She didn't want him to get hurt. So she made the queen of Carthage fall in love with him. And the Queen of Carthage is a widow. She had vowed she was never going to marry again. She was allowed to be this ruler, super badass lady. But because Aphrodite made her fall so deep, basically, when the gods are like, hey, Aeneas, you gotta leave. Like, you gotta go to Italy because you're going to found a race there. You're going to start what's going to be the best society ever. Like, you have to go. And so when Dido finds out that he is going to leave, she just completely breaks down, builds a funeral pyre, puts herself on top of it, and like immolates herself. And so to give, yeah, I know, to give Achilles, or sorry, why do I keep saying the wrong name? To give Aeneas a moment similar to Odysseus in the underworld, his underworld moment is Dido is the one who turns away from him and like goes back to her husband. Yeah, but that's like the one bad thing you could say about Aeneas the entire time. He's a great husband. He is a great leader. He is great to the gods. And so, like, Hera is his number one hater in that, but only because he's a Trojan. It's not even because he's him, you know?
Um,
She's just like, this Trojan can't survive.
I know we were talking about this before, but we were saying that, and now I'm like, because Rick Riordan is who he is as a person, I'm like, did you do this on purpose?
Mhm.
To have Percy be like Aeneas because the grudge against Hera is astounding. Like that's actually one of the things in Battle Labyrinth that comes up is where some of that like dying, burning hatred comes from
Yeah.
on both sides. And so, and then also Odysseus is definitely like Annabeth,
Mhm.
who thinks way too much and doesn't notice things that seem obvious to everybody else because she's like thinking too much and thinking that she can like this person just doesn't understand what's going on when they actually do. Um, and then Achilles is definitely Clarice. Oh my god! So like
Yes.
that's all I'm gonna say about that. But uh, yeah, and so when you're talking about the umbrella of like power, I guess for lack of a better way to describe that,
Mhm.
I told you this, but I'll say it again for this. Like I definitely understand why men are obsessed with the Roman Empire because I, especially American, but really like any colonizing country, really, I understand why they do because the idea that like everyone just like knows their place and they like don't try to change where they're from and everyone takes care of everybody is like what every colonizing country wants to believe they are, but none of them actually are. People don't do that. Like you don't just you're not just like born and just like are fine with like the place that you're in. Like I don't want to be poor my entire life just because I was born to people that were really poor. Like why would I want to do that? Why would I want to stay there just because it's my place? Like no, fuck you. Like,
Yeah.
but it's like that you can't like decide where you're like where you're supposed to stay in life just dependent on who you're like genetically attached to, I guess is the best way to put it. But it's just I'm like, okay, now I understand where that weird fixation came from.
Dude bros in Roman society and Roman history. Going back to that idea, I think a lot of them wouldn't acknowledge that certain things that took place there would not happen in their version of this, because we have instances in Roman society of slaves being so beloved by their masters that they get freed in their wills. and get like portions of inheritance and stuff. Nobody's doing that, you know? Like nobody's really doing that. It's like the best of the best people. But see, in a system like Rome, where everybody's afraid of the gods, everybody's afraid that if they piss the gods off enough, it's not only going to be the ruin of themselves, but their entire country, then like people do fall in line with things like that. Nobody fears God and the umbrella of authority enough to take it seriously these days.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I'm not
Yeah.
even sure that they did completely back then either.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's easy to kind of like sanitize how things actually were.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
don't
But
think that Rome would have fallen as spectacularly as it did if it was actually working like that.
well, and it has to do with power. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
men get too much power. We see what happens. It's literally happening in our faces right now. You give power to the wrong men, bad things are going to happen.
Yes, especially if they don't know how to use Signal.
Just, yeah. But to go back to Aeneas for a second, so Aeneas was written specifically to be a Roman, like, we are so much better than the Greeks, because unlike Odysseus, who goes on the same journey almost, you know, like he doesn't go to Italy, but he goes on a very long journey after the Trojan War. Aeneas does not lose men. He does not lose men in the same way that Odysseus does. And in fact, he picks up a couple of Odysseus's men because Virgil wrote in that there happened to be some guy left behind on Circe's island. And I believe there was also somebody, it's either Polyphemus's island or Calypso's island. I think it's Polyphemus's island. But like he left men behind. He ran away from men at times, like the Lystragonians they were literally hauling rocks at the other ships, and since he wasn't parked in the same area, he just left, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
um the Romans were like, oh, but our hero is going to be a great military leader, he's going to be a captain, he's not going to have any casualties. Pretty much like that one, what was it, the epic song where they tried to be like Odysseus didn't lose a single man in Troy and now he's
Yeah.
losing all these men on the journey. Like, yeah. Aeneas actually didn't lose any men. Yeah.
The
But
stuff,
yeah.
the stuff I wanted to talk about with this discussion too is, of course, Percy Jackson because this is what we do with our lives. But it's the way that like the I feel like since a couple people commented this and made me like realize like, oh yeah, that's what Rick is doing. What the hell is wrong with me? That I've never noticed this before is that like Rick is showing kind of the example between like these are the olden day heroes and this is the heroes that I think actually should be there. Like making like a very clear distinction between this is how people used to be, but I don't like that anymore. And I want
Yeah.
my hero to be like this. And like I talked about it last week a little bit, but like Luke and Percy are a really good example of that. That Luke just does honestly some of the stuff that Luke does is very similar to a lot of the things that the old heroes do.
Yeah.
And he's the villain, like extremely so. You are terrified of him for most of the books, and at least you're supposed to be. And Percy is the hero, very much so, and he's not at all like any of the other heroes. Like why I every time we read like a Greek retelling, I'm like Percy would beat this person up is because he would beat that person up because he doesn't respect people who treat people like that. Because he's that Percy is really like the person in a lot of the Greek mythology stories that were never like the focus. They were like the ignored one, the one that was kind of like trampled over while all the other heroes were like out there to save the day and
Yep.
stuff. But instead, in this story, he's like the focus of it all. And it makes like a very clear way. Like, I think it's interesting when people talk about Zoe and her story with Hercules or Heracles in Titan's Curse and like why it's there. Like, I see some people be like, oh, that story is there so that Percy knows what kind of hero he doesn't want to be. And I'm like, no, Percy already knows from like pretty much from as soon as he shows up there as like just himself in the very first book. He knows exactly who he would want to be and what he wants to do. He doesn't need to like hear Zoe's story in order for him to know that he doesn't want to be like that. Like he hates Hercules. After that moment, he immediately is like, "Oh, he's disgusting." Like even in the book, he's like, "Oh, ew! Like why did I ever like him? Now that I know the truth about him." There's not like a hero worship moment where he's like, "But I don't want to believe that he's bad like that." That's not Percy. That story is there to show the difference between Percy and literally everyone else, or Luke.
Hmm.
That's why they tell that story, because Luke would do something like that and is actively doing that to Annabeth at the same time that they are talking about this in that book. Like there's a very obvious parallel there that he's
Hmm.
trying to make, and I'm not sure people realize it because they think that Percy needs to learn what kind of hero he wants to be. And it's like, no. Percy knows what kind of hero he wants to be. Everyone else needs to get on his page. It's
Yeah.
everyone else who like needs to realize what's like the right path here. He's the one that's right the entire time. He's just waiting for everyone else to figure it out.
Yeah.
But he knows who he wants to be. It's just like those stories are there to show the difference between him and everyone else, to be like, no, this is who you should want to be like. You shouldn't
Yeah.
want to be like somebody who's willing to do whatever they can to get whatever they want.
Hmm.
That's
Or
not
just to
like,
be remembered.
yeah, just to be that's all you want is for people to remember you. Like that's such a vain, like egoistic sort of want. Like that's just no, that's not in this story with this author. That's not what he wants this story to be like. He obviously doesn't think that that's important, and it's not. It's
Hmm.
not important at all. Like I say this all the time, that if I was never like a known person, but people like listened to me about the things that I talked about with abuse and stuff, and I knew that that was important, I wouldn't care that nobody knew that it was me. I would actually be fine with that. I
Hmm.
just want people to listen to me, and so it's like, yeah, I don't think that I don't need that like egoism. Get it,
Yeah.
ew. Get it away from me. Like I don't think a lot of abused people like that. It's either you really want that because you want to like avoid everything, or you hate it. It's like
Yeah.
one thing or the other. But we wanted to compare the like older heroes um, to to Percy
Who I am.
and Rey from Star Wars, because I was like, we have to have a girl. We can't
Hmm.
have them all be boys.
Yeah.
And Aang, because I love all those people a lot, and I feel like Aang and Percy are like somewhat similar,
Hmm.
except that Percy is definitely more angry than Aang, and will like
Hmm.
punch you right in the neck, like as he should when you deserve it. Um, but there's still the people that um, can like see the villain person in some sort of empathetic light,
Hmm.
where when they get to like the end and they're destitute, it's very similar with what's his, I never remember his name in Avatar, the very mean man, Mark Hamill.
Ozai.
Yeah, Ozai. Mark Hamill uh, does the voice, so that always throws me off. When I found that out, I was like, "What?" One thing that is funny about me is that I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender at the same time that I was finishing reading Percy Jackson, so I have like positive memories of those two things like overlapping in my
Hmm.
mind. So I love that we talk about them a lot
Yeah.
at the same time. But yeah, the way that Aang realizes that Ozai is like, well, you're just laying there and you don't have any powers, and I guess I could kill you, but that would be kind of awful and against everything that I am as a person. And so instead, I'm going to make you live with no
Hmm.
powers and feel what it feels like for everyone else that you've been putting this through for your entire life, except that everyone else isn't going to be as horrible as you are. Um, it would be way better. It would be honestly worse for them to have to live through that instead of getting the out. And for him just to kill them and then spend the rest of his life wondering if he should have done that. Or like wondering, and in the same way with like Percy, where he gives Luke the dagger and is like, you can take yourself out, and he does. And it's the same kind of thing, that the thing that really ends both of those situations is that they allowed the other person to make the choice if they wanted to live or die, and they didn't just take them out at them as like weak because of that sometimes, that I think is really funny. Because just my own life experience, that it's very easy to just be like violent and angry. It's a lot harder to like listen to people that um that like remind you of people that, or that have hurt you, and you just like sit there and listen to them and hear them out, and like give them like the chance to not be like that anymore. Like I could just like not talk to anybody in my entire family if I really wanted to. And I don't think any of them would like question me that much if I did that. Honestly, even like the extended family, I don't think any of them would be, they would be like sad that I didn't talk to them, but I don't think any of them would be like, Shannon's a bad person because she doesn't want to talk to us anymore. They'd be like, no, we fucked up. Like all of them like say all the time, almost every time they see me, sometime my extended family at least, they'll like mention something about how they know that they messed up and that they're sorry and things like that. And so they're just glad that I give them the chance. And that's way, it's definitely harder, but it's definitely more rewarding.
Yeah.
And that's like those two people's stories. And Ray's story is kind of similar to that too. And but I really like Ray because she's someone who comes from nothing, like literally nothing, was left on a planet with nothing. Didn't like try to block out who her family actually was, and it was just like left to fend for herself. A more exaggerated version of being abused as a kid, most definitely.
Yeah.
But not similar enough themes that I could like understand where she was coming from, and how she like hung on to like childish like dolls and like little toys and stuff she has in the beginning. But her story is definitely, she definitely gets really angry. And I think that's the thing that I like about Heroes, is that there's always a point where they always get like fed up towards the end, because it's like there's only so many times that you can deal with utter bullshit before you just like start yelling at somebody because you just can't take it anymore. And it's always frustrating because then people get upset at you and they're like, why are you so angry, why are you so upset? And it's like, you should be glad that I have a crippling like fear that I'm a bad person, or otherwise I would talk a lot more like this.
Yeah.
But Ray definitely has like mental breakdowns of sorts in when it comes to the end, when she's like having to accept that her family are like literally the worst people ever. But she's able to like get away from that, which is something that I of course love, which is why I always love Rise of Skywalker, and I don't care if you hate it. I still love it because of that, because she's someone who comes from a really bad family, and instead of just thinking that that just makes her a bad person, she's like, no, I'm gonna be a like me, who is a good person, and I'm gonna help everybody and finally stop this craziness that's been going on for like thousands of years in Star Wars, like getting support from, she literally gets support in the ending scene that I always laugh about when Kylo falls into a hole.
Yeah.
She gets support from every single like Jedi that's ever existed in the entirety of time. And they
Yeah.
all show up to support her, and I'm like, yeah, that's basically every scapegoat's dream, of your all of your ancestors showing up and being like, let me help you in the way that nobody else ever did when I was alive, or we were alive, or anything like that. But all of those heroes are people that had every, like, one of the Force Awakens is like my favorite movie ever. Like when I think about it too much, I start to cry when I'm not even watching it because I haven't watched it in like years, because I
Yeah.
used to watch it every single day when I was really did not want to be alive. And so because of that, I just haven't watched it in years. But I still like see it, like clips of it sometimes, and cry, because how much I love it. But the reason why I love it so much is because Ray and Finn in that movie have every reason to not want to do this, to like not be good people. And that's kind of the story of that, of the sequel trilogy, which is why it's my favorite one, is that like Finn grew up in a totalitarian like cult basically,
Mhm.
that like worshipped the emperor, and was able to somehow stay enough of himself that when he realized that things were bad, he was like bye, and just literally like ran away and somehow, survived enough to find Ray. And Ray is somebody who's grown up like having to fight for everything. You wouldn't think
Mhm.
that she would meet somebody like Finn and like trust him or like want to help him, but she's like, "Oh my God, Luke Skywalker is real! Like I have to go meet my hero." And so they're like super traumatized people that are able to still like find a way to stay themselves in some way and not have it be completely ruined. And it's just, and then you see like Kylo, who has like everything that you would ever, that you could possibly ever want in that world. Like his parents are very well off. He got like anything that he could ever want, and he is so angry and the worst person ever, pretty
Mhm.
much in that story. And so it's like, oh yeah, like what would Kylo have done if he was like left on a planet when he was 6 years old and just asked to fend for himself? He would have like thrown himself a pity party and turned into like a mass murderer at like the age of 10 probably. But like these two people are not like that. They don't have anything. Even when he's fighting them, they don't have anything. And they're just like trying not to die because he has the upper hand at every possible moment, and they still somehow beat him, and he's always so angry about that because he doesn't get like why do you, like he literally asked Ray, like, you're just a scavenger, like why do people care about you, you're nothing. And he literally tells her, you're nothing without me, in the second movie. And has that general thing with her of like, why do people care about you when you're nobody and you don't matter? And it's like, I don't know, maybe because you're a dick, and
Yeah.
also because I'm just generally a nice person, and that's what people actually like it doesn't matter if you have a like, that's a general theme with the Percy Jackson stuff too, is that it doesn't matter if you have a lot of power and you have a lot of like respect from people because they fear you or otherwise. It doesn't matter if you are a horrible person, because they're going to find that out and figure that out someday. And there's
Yes.
nothing that you can do to like stop them from ever figuring that out. Like all the things that people do to try to stop it just makes it worse when it does get revealed, because you realize all the ways that they tried to, manipulate you and things like that, and you're just like, okay, that just makes it, you're even worse than I thought you were. Now that I realize what you were really doing all that time, when I thought you were just being nice, you're actually trying to stop me from finding out who you really were. And
Mhm.
and I think like the heroes of the olden times are the opposite in the way that they're like, yeah, I'm a bad person, who cares? Like, I don't
Yeah.
care that I'm a bad person. I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to do what I want to do. And if you're in my way, you're a problem and you need to get out of my way now before I kill you. Because how dare you, like, stop me on this, like, magical, like, amazing quest of egoism that I've decided to go on. Um, that's basically what they're like then, that they just were like, how dare you be in my way? But
Mhm.
us now, like, modern heroes now, are the are about like the ones back then were all about like individual glory. The
Mhm.
heroes now that people like, at least, are about like community. They're about
Yes.
like lifting up not just you, but your people, your the people that you care about. Um and that's what
Well, and
actually matters.
I have to wonder too if that's like it's such a huge flip that you wonder if it's cultural. You wonder if it's
Mhm.
because you were supposed to be a part of a herd back then, so standing out looks a lot better. Now everybody wants to stand out, so being a person of the community are the people that we think of as heroes, because like when you say the word hero in just a normal everyday context, we think things like firefighters, like first responders, um, people that put their life out on the line to save other people's lives. We don't necessarily think like, oh, that guy who rescued 10 children or something, like it's not the same. And also you think of the way that they're fighting wars out on the battlefield. Once again, you're in like a huge herd of people in a
Mhm.
mass of iron and bronze. So the only way you get known in there is if you make your way out of that massive iron and bronze untouched, or at least not the most touched.
Yeah. I do think
Yeah.
that it is something to do with A lot of like the Captain America comics and a lot of other Marvel comics were started during World War II as
Yeah.
a way to like counteract the Nazis. Like that's why Captain America punches a Nazi like right in the face, and he's Jewish. Um, and there's a lot of that's why a lot of comics in the original form are Jewish. And
Hmm.
like Bucky even is Jewish in some iterations because there's so many different versions, especially of him in the beginning. But I
Hmm.
feel like that's when that kind of stuff happened is because people. It even happened a little bit before that because J.R.R. Tolkien, when he wrote Lord of the Rings, like it's once you find out that he was in World War I, you're like, oh, like that's why you wrote this. Like this is, and
Hmm.
like this is very obviously a giant story he wrote about a group of people that was like him remembering the people that he was with in war and community and fighting against these things and like sticking together over everything and friendship being the number one thing, and that's why the characters in that had PTSD because he actually had PTSD from being in World War I. But at a certain point, as like I think society went on, people just kind of realized that like the people in charge are not nice all the time, and so some of the more artistic people just started writing stories where there were heroes that were in those positions of power but like used it to try to help normal people because they didn't see people doing that
Hmm.
in their actual life, and it just became like this thing that's what we see heroes as